Welcome back. In this video, you will understand what is Python. It is very important to first understand what is Python because throughout this course, we will use programming language called Python to implement the concepts of programming. Now, according to Wikipedia, Python is an interpreted high-level and general-purpose programming language. Its design philosophy emphasizes code readability. Its language construct and object-oriented approach aim to help programmers write clear, logical code for small and large-scale projects. That's a lot to take in. So let's try to divide this definition to understand in depth. The first thing to understand is that Python is interpreted and compiled programming language. It means that when we write our code in Python, first it must be compiled into something called bytecode. You heard it right. Then it will be interpreted into a machine code which will be executed by our CPU. Interpreted means that you have set of instructions and your interpreter will read these set of instructions to execute. So now what happens is your bytecode is interpreted. By the way, why we have to make it so complex of having compilation first, then going for interpreter? That's for one reason, and that is we use concept of bytecode to achieve something called portability. So what is portability? We have this term which is platform independent, that you can write code once and you can run on different platforms. Example, as your machine changes, your CPU architecture also changes. So if you are for one machine and you are compiling it to get a binary file or native code, it may not work on some other machines because machine may have different CPU architecture. And to solve this problem, we have concept of virtual machine. Now we have this concept of virtual machine which is called Python virtual machine. With what you run is bytecode, and this bytecode will run on virtual machine to convert into machine code. That simply means now it doesn't matter what your CPU architecture is. If your machine has a virtual machine software which is called Python virtual machine software, you are good to go. So now what happens is you write a source code in Python, it's compiled in bytecode. Now it will be interpreted using virtual machine. So now there is no constraint of CPU architecture. So if you write the code in some different CPU architecture, you can execute the code into different CPU architecture. The one thing that is important is virtual machine must be installed into your machine to interpret the bytecode to get the binary code which can be executed by our CPU. The next thing is that Python is general purpose programming language. We can use Python for a wide variety of application domains. Python can be used to develop mobile application, web application, and desktop application. And my favorite, that Python is mostly used in field of artificial intelligence and data science. So you can create an application to recognize the cat, whether it's a cat or not, using artificial intelligence, which can be done by Python. And it is also used in the field of data science, which is rapidly growing with the passage of time. It is also used for task automation. For example, you are in the job of finding out special words in emails. So what you can do is you can automate the task, and that can save you tons of time, right? In short, it's everywhere. Python is everywhere. My favorite thing about Python is that it's object-oriented program. Now, Python is not only object-oriented programming based language. There are other programming languages such as Java, which is also based on object-oriented paradigm. But the question is, what is object-oriented? Well, object-oriented programming is a programming paradigm based on the concept of objects, which can contain data and code. Data in the form of fields often known as attributes or properties, and code in the form of procedure, often known as methods. It is one of the most important concepts in computer science. That is why we have a complete section on object-oriented programming, where we will discuss about this concept in a detail. For now, let's understand it briefly. Let's say you are developing a game, a car racing game. That's exciting, right? So what you need is a car. So a car can be an object. Now this car has certain attributes, like it has 4 wheels, 4 doors, 6 mirrors, 2 at the left, 2 at the right, 1 at front, 1 at back. And this car has also procedures or features, like it can move, it can have a speed, steering can control wheels, which in turn can control car, and while you are at speed, you can brake to stop the car or slow down the car. Now we divide the car attributes and car functions. Now once we create an object, we can reuse it. So we can create the same car in our game multiple times by using the same object. It might sound a little bit complicated right now, but in next section, one of the next section, you will understand object-oriented in a detail. So don't worry about that. So now you have understood that Python is an interpreted, high-level, and general-purpose programming language. Its design philosophy emphasizes code readability. Its language construct and object-oriented approach aim to help programmers write clear, logical code for small and large-scale projects. One of the most important thing about Python is that it's beginner-friendly. So beginner like you can understand the programming fundamental concepts using Python very easily. That's why I have chosen this. And according to Stack Overflow, it is one of the top used programming language in the world. So if you master the Python, there is no chance that you will not be succeed. So from the next video, we will start learning about the concepts of programming. And the first thing we need to do is to set up our development environment. That's what we're gonna do in the next video. So see you in the next video. Bye-bye.